Hey guys, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion. Friday Facts 215 multi-threading issues. So, as you can tell, I'm not joined by Scarhoof. He's actually out of town in Vegas. Man, I'm jealous. So we're doing this one solo, but this is actually a very technical one. And Afflixian, one of my awesome patrons, has been kind enough to give kind of a summary and more less technical breakdown of things as we go through here to kind of help both myself and you guys, if you don't have knowledge in this type of stuff, to understand. So big thank you to him. This is written by Kovrex and Clonin. This first part is by Clonin. So this is kind of in regards to PvP and spawn areas. So to make PvP fun and fair, it's pretty important that all the teams have a fair start. We do this for the normal game by using some special logic to generate a specific starting area. While the map generation didn't support this, I worked around the issue by copy-pasting all the starting area chunks to new starting areas for all players. This looked very odd though, and since it was done in Lua script, it was very slow. So the solution is to fix the, and you can see this is kind of this example here, these different spawn areas. So the solution is to fix the map generator to create multiple starting areas, which with all the refactoring done by Tigas was not so hard. Whereas before all the logic calculated its own distance from start, now it looks for the closest starting area and calculates the distance from that, which makes sense, to kind of evenly space them and stuff. This actually fixes and simplifies a lot of PvP script, and as I also don't have to worry about clearing away huge spider nests from each team's front door. And so this kind of shows, and this looks like the 016 map previewer. It's obviously far different than this one. Yeah, you can see spawn area here, 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 and I think that's it. But yeah, so this is a cool preview to actually look at, which is pretty nice. This is a much cleaner solution as the new starting areas are seamlessly integrated into the map, which is pretty cool if you're into PvP. I don't know how many people actually do PvP. I don't really know of anybody, but I imagine it would be fun. I'm actually in one of my latest mods, Spotlight, with the combat robots mod. Someone mentioned using that for PvP, which would actually be pretty interesting. So now that this is kind of fixed, maybe once 016 comes out, we'll have to give that a try. So then down into even more technical stuff, multi-threading issues is written by Kovrex. So I'm going to kind of summarize-ish and then kind of go off of what Afflixian has written out for me. So essentially, this first paragraph is we're always saying that we keep the full update multi-threading as the last ace in the sleeve to be used after the normal optimizations become too difficult. Apart from the plan to split update into chunks and update them separately, there are also smaller and simpler things we can do. We have, for example, this part of the update step where we update trains, electric network, and belts, and we update it one after another. So trains update, and then electric network update, and then, or transfer, and then transport belt update. But these tasks are pretty much independent of each other. Trains and transport belts don't interact with electricity, and belts don't usually interact with trains. So essentially saying that, these could potentially be run parallel, simultaneously. And so he tried to run these in parallel and measured how fast it would be. So kind of a quick little example here. And so essentially, to his surprise, the parallel version didn't speed things up. It was actually even slower. So first he thought it was caused by the fact that the threads steal each other's caches, or the task is too short to be parallelized. But then I realized that we already do the prepare logic in parallel. So to kind of clarify what a cache is, and this is from Afflixian's thing. So caching, data storage locations, and this is in these things I'm going to list are in order of increasing speed. So disk, like SSD or hard drive, being the slowest, and then RAM, main memory, we obviously know what RAM is, and then cache L1, L2, L3, which I think I think that is something with the processor, and then the CPU registers as well. So that's kind of like accessing stuff and such, and different parts are slower or faster than other parts. So the prepare logic gathers all the data for rendering and is doing it in parallel up to 8 threads. The task is iterating through the game world and is also quite short. Yet still the parallelization works pretty well there. After a few days and multi-threading videos, I got the answer to my question. The answer is the same as other answers related to performance. It is caused by cache invalidation. So then cache invalidation, and then again, this is from Affliction, is the act of writing data to something in your cache, which means it needs to be propagated all the way back up to disk. So that's kind of the issue, is it has to like go back up through the system, and can kind of and be a problem and slow things down. So there's some shared cache for all the threads, L3 I believe, and some smaller caches specifically for each of the cores, L2, L1. It's divided into some kind of pages. The problem is that as long as I don't control the memory allocation, data of 3 objects that might be completely independent can end up in the same page of memory cache. So let's imagine this situation. One piece of memory cache: transport belt, train, electric buffer. So essentially, even if 2 different cores work with the same part of memory, they don't slow each other down as long as they only read the memory, which is the case of our prepare logic, is a read-only thing, as each core has its own copy of the memory page. The problem arises when the operation is not read-only. So, kind of like this stuff. So each thread has its own copy of page, but whenever something is changed, the other copy of the same page needs to be invalidated and updated. This means that the threads are invalidating each other's caches all the time, which slows the whole process, so much slower than the non-parallel solution. So to kind of Affliction gives a nice like library analogy here. So say we're in a library and we're studying a topic. The books you need can be on disk, in RAM, in cache, or in your registers. So essentially, if they were in disk, it would be like a whole nother library. So this is kind of just an analogy for like how like the speed and like what you have to go through. So the disk would essentially be like you have to go to a whole nother library just to get the information. Your RAM would be in your current library somewhere. It may be across the library, but it's still in the same library. L3 cache is, it's already on your table. L1 and L2 cache is it's right in front of you, and then CPU registers is essentially it's already on the current page. Like you just happen to be with the topic you need, like on the page you're at. So, and then Affliction goes on to say that cache is expensive to make compared to RAM and disk, so it's very limited in storage size, but it's much, much faster than even RAM. And then L3 cache, which was mentioned above, is shared across the entire CPU, all cores. L1 and L2 cache are specific to a core. So that's kind of what's going on here. Hopefully that makes sense. It helped make more sense to me as well. So then how do they solve that? The solution would be to organize the memory allocation in such a way that everything that is on the same chunk or related to the same task would have to use its own memory allocator that keeps things in one place together in the memory. So each chunk has to have its own piece of memory dedicated to entities in the chunk. Trains would have to have all its data in one piece of memory together. This way it shouldn't happen that 2 tasks would work on one piece of memory at the same time. So in that case, multi-threading would actually speed things up. So the problem with this is that it requires big changes in the code, as not only the entities itself, but all their dynamically allocated data would have to be always allocated depending on the entity position. So essentially, this means that if we decide to do this step, it would probably be one big update related only to this, and is not something we have time to do before 1.0. So it was very technical. If you're still with me, I hope you're still with me. Essentially, just the huge summary is, and this may seem unimportant, but multi-threading is actually brought up a lot. I've seen so many Reddit posts, so many forum posts, people in Discord, all kind of stuff, people being like, well, first off, thinking Factorio is multi-threaded, which it's not, and that is why when talking about like hardware for Factorio performance, you want a CPU that has the best single core performance you can get, which currently is like an i7 6700K or 7700K, and that's why it can be deceiving. What people are like, I'm gonna get like a Ryzen, or Threadripper or whatever, which will do like nothing for you because there could be 16 cores and only one of them is actually going to be used at one time. So multi-threading is brought up a lot, and people are always like, well, why don't you make Factorio multi-threaded? It would help so much, or why isn't it already? And this is why. This explains it. It becomes a problem. In some cases, it would actually slow down the process because of these issues they mention, and it would be like like he says, a big code rewrite. Like it's not just a small thing. It would be a pretty huge rewrite of stuff and have to be pretty much an update on its own. And right now they just want to focus more on game features and additions and polishing rather than multi-threading, where when they can still do these small optimizations that were mentioned up above. Is that, you know, there's still stuff they can optimize that doesn't require nearly as much work. So that kind of just, I guess, is just a general public answer for multi-threading. I've seen our seeding and Covrex and stuff specifically address people who asked why it's not multi-threaded or why they don't. But this is a good like public answer as to why it's not and why they haven't done it yet. And they may never do it, which is okay. The game is already highly optimized as it is. So that's it. I mean, it was very technical. I'm looking forward to future ones. I'm getting a little anxious for the artillery wagon teaser and anything else they have planned. I really can't wait. Really excited. Hopefully the next couple Friday Facts will include some of that. But very interesting nonetheless. If you did understand it, awesome. If you didn't, I apologize. It was hard for me to even understand because this is definitely not my area of expertise. But Affliction's breakdown really did help. And I think that's going to do it, guys. If you have any thoughts or questions, leave them down in the comments. If they're questions, I'll try my best to answer, or ask someone who does know and then answer, and try to help you out. And I always love to hear what you guys say, so leave it down below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Next week, Scarho should be joining me again. He will be back, and we'll see what the next one holds. Anyway, take care, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.